Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, and welcome. It is the Wednesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, happy to be here, hoping that you'll join the late night national town hall conversation. We can mix it up, we can chop it up, whatever you want to talk about, I'm game. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Man, I don't know where to start. I'm going to start with some of the big stuff internationally. Let's see. China says we are ready for war with the United States. This was interesting. This was a back and forth between statements. And one of the statements was made by China, but I'm trying to see who exactly it was there. It's in response to Secretary Hegseth, or actually he responded saying the United States is prepared to go to war. And China initiating this saying, if war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight till the end. That was a post, I think, from the foreign minister of China. I had it here, and it's disappearing. Anyway, it doesn't matter, right? Some high-up official that wasn't Xi Jinping. And this, I think, is the typical thing they do, right? This is what all the world leaders do. This is how they posture. As long as I've been around, we haven't gotten into too many wars with people that talk like this. The wars we've gotten into, we've usually started, right? At least in my life. You know, we've gone to this place, we've gone to that place, we've bombed this, we've bombed that. So I'm typically a skeptic on a lot of these things. You know, somebody sent me a text earlier, and they said, "Oh, well, you know, thankfully Putin didn't go to war with us after the whole pipeline bombing." And I thought, why on earth would they go to war with us when they probably hit us back? We just don't know it. We, the public, don't know it. Well, who knows? Who knows why this ship mysteriously ran into the bridge, right? That was known all over the place as a bridge collapse, even though it was knocked down by a ship. And we talked about it, and I brought every expert I could bring on, and they're all like, yeah, apparently the ship just lost control and hit the bridge. All right. Thank you, experts. In my non-expert opinion, and that of General Blaine Holt, who said, sounds like a foreign power likely took control through a hack or something like that of the boat and used it as a weapon to take out the bridge. And that sounds like a good way to get back at somebody for something they've done, letting them know, hey, look, I can do a lot worse. The things with the planes, also probably a message from someone else, right? Everybody wants, it's DEI because of Biden. Oh, it's DEI because of Trump, eliminating air traffic controllers and whatever other nonsense. I'm going to stick with my tinfoil hat theories that these are the bad guys doing what bad guys do. And yeah, maybe there's some error to it as well. Because, you know, you look at the amount of the comparisons that were out there saying, you know, during the first, month and a half of the Biden administration, we had more crashes then than we did now. All right, then maybe it is a thing. But, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a little tinfoil hat conspiracy in your life. And trust me, I do very little of it. Some people do their entire shtick on that. I can't. It doesn't work for me. I don't have that level of gusto and passion and zeal and anger, honestly. You got to be angry to do that stuff. You got to be angry all day long. Can you believe they're doing that to our country? Can you believe they're doing it? I just don't have it. I don't have it. Anyway, so China says they're ready for war with America. And listen, it's clear. I mean, as long as I've been involved in politics, and again, you're talking about early 2000s, right, is when I started to dip my toes in the political water. This clearly has been China's move. They've always been preparing for war. If you read the literature they put out, Xi saying that he is going to be president for life, this unrestricted warfare, which they describe as warfare in every aspect of everything, right? Warfare on your minerals. So who controls minerals in every country on the globe? China. This is part of their warfare. Making sure nobody else has access to rare earth minerals is what they do. So Trump fighting back, he's trying to get some rare earth minerals to be competitive. I get it. He's a smart guy. I wish the last 4 presidents were thinking the same way while these guys were gobbling up all the mining rights. So I get it. They do it in every, when was the last time you heard someone in the United States say, man, this country is our enemy. We're going to send propaganda and experts into their universities to tell them that it's okay for your little boys to become little girls and for your little girls to become little boys. And then when they do, it's okay for them to commingle in the same sports and destroy their morale and destroy your military from the inside out. We're going to make you a fat, lazy people, right? Rich, are you saying Americans are lazy? I'm saying the fat ones are lazy. I spent a long time being fat. And for the most part, I was lazy. That's why I didn't go to the gym, right? Or do anything else. I was like, I don't do that kind of stuff. That's too much. I don't want to do that, right? You get used to being soft. And after a while, you get tired of it. And you say, you know what, it's enough, right? Thankfully, I had a great dad and a good family and a good doctor. And I was like, you're losing your edge here. And I was. But I get it. This is all the result of making us complacent, soft people. So this is where we are in America. So of course China is beefing up for war with anybody. Of course they're ready. Their whole goal in life is global hegemony. The hegemonic rule of China. Now, the United States doesn't think that way per se. I think they may operate that way at times, right? People always, when I get into these arguments with our isolationist friends and they tell me things like, I don't understand, Rich. I don't understand why we have to have a base in every country. I don't understand why we have to be the world police. I don't understand. It's real simple. Because if we're not doing it, Xi Jinping is going to do it. Now, have you seen how he treats his people? The social credit score. 1,000 people got COVID. Put them all together. Oh my gosh, the building collapsed. Oh my gosh, there are no survivors. This is how they do it. Who sells hair? They do. They sell human hair for wigs. How do they get it? They enslave the Muslims. They grow their hair ridiculously long and they sell it. And that's the part that they publicly talk about. They sell other parts of human anatomy as well, not so openly. It's a brutal regime. Brutal. I don't know. Listen, you could say what you want about every last Democrat, right? Everybody's up in arms about Al Green. I've never heard an accusation about any Democrat, including Al Green, that they are selling human parts. Now, those that subscribe to the support for Planned Parenthood, who's a big broker in fetal parts, they're a special type of dirty. But the rest of them, they're not in the same type of game as China. Most Americans aren't in the same type of game as China. They're playing this other type of game, a really vicious game. So anyway, that's my rant on China. I'm thankful for this country, and I think you should be too. I'm thankful that I could get on the radio and riff against China. I'm grateful that I can get on the radio and tell you what I think and that you could listen to the radio. And yeah, there are some people out there that want to buy radio stations and stifle the message that's being put out there. I get that. But they're not going to win. There's deep state actors out there that, every now and again you hear a little fuzzy signal on your radio. You don't get it. You don't get the signal. Or some sports ball team that says, we're going to preempt the Valdez show so that you could hear us calling the game. I know that happens too. But ultimately, if you love talk radio, if you love podcasts or the news, you got to get the C. Crane radio. Just make sure that you never miss the show. The CC Radio 3, it delivers exceptional spoken word audio. The clarity makes it feel like your favorite host, me, Rich Valdez, Richie V, is right there in the room with you. Now, this CC Radio 3, it pulls in long-range AM and FM stations with exceptional reception, and it includes emergency features like the NOAA, the NOAA weather, and a 2-meter ham band. That's golden, for especially in times of emergency. It runs on a power cord that comes with it, or a set of batteries that'll give you over 170 hours of power. I don't know where you can get that. I've never had a battery that lasts that long, but the CC Radio 3 has it. That's why they call it the Almost Everything Radio. So again, you could listen to your favorite podcasts like This is America, America at Night, and both by me, Rich Valdez. And of course, you got music that you could listen to from any Bluetooth device, any smartphone, any smart speaker. All you got to do is call to order, right? The CC Radio 3. You can call the customer service. It's based right here in the United States, 800-522-8863. That's 1-800-522-8863. Or go online, visit ccrane.com/rich. That's my name. That's ccrane.com/RICH. And use code RICH when you check out to get an additional 10% off orders that are over $75. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
A distillery in Hawaii filed a lawsuit challenging the Jones Act, arguing the 1920 law violates a clause in the Constitution prohibiting Congress from favoring ports of one state over another. The Jones Act says all ships transporting goods between U.S. ports must be U.S. built, U.S. flagged, U.S. owned, and U.S. crewed, limiting competition in the American shipping market, which the Kaloa Rum Company on the island of Kauai argues drives up the cost of living for island businesses and residents. The CEO for Kaloa said in a statement, "We pay more for everything we import, from bottles to packaging, just like all families across the state. And then we are hit a second time, paying exorbitant costs for exporting our rum to our fellow Americans. This lawsuit is about ending an unfair, outdated law that discriminates against the citizens of Hawaii and Alaska."
Now, what she left out in that report was that this also affects the citizens on the island of Puerto Rico, where my family is from. And I can tell you, this is something we've seen so much of whenever there's a hurricane, whenever there's a need to bring immediate relief and aid to the folks in Puerto Rico, you can't, right? Because you can't find enough ships that meet the standard. And interestingly, in the last big hurricane, Hurricane Maria, President Trump smartly suspended the Jones Act so that we could bring the supplies very quickly, because there were international partners that were saying, oh, we have water that we could bring quickly. We have this that we could bring over. And we allowed it to happen. But it's one thing to be America first, and that is a great thing. But I think it's another thing to say, well, we're so America first that we're going to allow people to go without electricity, without food, without water, in the name of this. You have to fly this flag. You can't come from another country. You have to be burning U.S. crude. All of these things in the time of a natural disaster don't make sense. Now, I thought at the time, this Jones Act is well-intentioned, but there are unintended consequences with this well-intentioned law. And it was evident on how we couldn't get things into Puerto Rico. Now, to add insult to injury, there was massive corruption on the island, where when the things did get there, they didn't get distributed fairly or even quickly. So those are separate issues, separate and apart from what's going on here. But I want to get into the Jones Act, because I think, when I go to Puerto Rico, and I haven't been to Hawaii, I've never been to Alaska, but I can say things are expensive on Puerto Rico. And of course, because it's an island, because you have to bring everything in, it adds up the cost, right? And I get that. But I believe in competition. And in many ways, this seems to limit the competition, right? What President Trump is doing with tariffs, I think, is a little bit different in so much as he's saying, all right, look, you want to do business here? Great, let's do business. But if you're going to tariff us, we're going to tariff you. And if you want no tariffs altogether, we could do that too, right? And I think that's free trade. That's cool. But this doesn't allow that, right? This just says this has to be this way all the time. And the Pacific Legal Foundation is representing folks now that say that's not constitutional. So I want to hear from a lawyer that says that the Jones Act is not constitutional and why it's wreaking havoc on Hawaii and Alaska and Puerto Rico as well. Josh Polk, welcome.
Hi, Rich. It's a pleasure to be on.
Thank you, sir. So I guess tell us a little bit about the genesis of this. It sounds like from the report I heard it was a Kaloa Rum Company, but there are others. Who are you representing, and how is it going?
Sure. So my law firm, Pacific Legal Foundation, represents Kaloa Rum Company. It's a Hawaii distiller. They ship their goods all around the world, and they like to share their rums with the U.S. mainland. Unfortunately, they've run into a bit of an issue with the Jones Act because the Jones Act restricts shipping to such a high degree that shipping costs from Hawaii are extremely expensive. Mm-hmm. And I would like to add a little bit to what you said in that this is different from other types of protectionist measures in that the burdens are placed entirely on American businesses. So foreigners don't have to check all the Jones Act boxes, only Americans do. So it might be cheaper to ship Japanese rum from Japan to Los Angeles than it is for our clients to ship their Hawaiian rum from Hawaii to Los Angeles, despite that being a much shorter route.
Sounds like mafia.
Exactly. So it's like basically an extortion payment has to be made to these monopoly shippers who benefit from the restrictions the Jones Act places on interstate shipping.
Now, how did you guys engage with them? I guess were they losing their shirts on shipping costs? Were they looking to file a lawsuit and found you guys? How did this whole thing happen? Because I find it. I guess my take here is I'm kind of surprised that we haven't seen a lawsuit like this in the past.
So for one thing, the legal theory that we're using, the port preference clause, requires that there be some discrimination between American ports. And so the only two states that could actually take advantage of this particular legal theory are Alaska and Hawaii. And so just that fact means that our options were fairly limited.
Because of the way their state laws are written?
Well, because the Jones Act actually impacts them more than anyone else. Despite having tons of coastline and tons of ports all over the United States, most of our interstate shipping is actually done via long-haul trucking or rail. And the Jones Act is actually a big reason for that because it made shipping via sea much more expensive. Unfortunately, Alaska and Hawaii don't have those options. There's no other way. So for people in Hawaii, 90% of the goods are brought in by ship. And it's simply not economical to shift over to the only other alternative, which is exporting or importing via air.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, well, let me just remind everybody who we're on with. Folks, we're on with Josh Polk. He's a lawyer with Pacific Legal Foundation, and they are suing the federal government over the Jones Act, on the constitutionality of it. And I want to get into a little bit of the legal theory on this because I think you cited something really interesting here, that this is not just an average protectionist measure. It goes beyond isolationism. It's preferential in detriment, right, to these two particular states. So we're going to talk about that when we come back. Folks, it's Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The Merchant Marine Act of 1920, commonly known as the Jones Act, has been a subject of extensive debate, particularly concerning its implications for Puerto Rico. This federal statute mandates that goods transported between U.S. ports must be carried on ships that are American-built, owned, crewed, and flagged. While the act was initially designed to bolster the U.S. maritime industry and ensure national security, its repercussions for Puerto Rico have been profound and, many argue, detrimental. The Jones Act significantly influences Puerto Rico's economy in several ways. The Act's restrictions limit competition among shipping companies, leading to higher transportation costs. These elevated costs are often transferred to consumers, resulting in increased prices for goods on the island. A study by the Cato Institute highlighted that the Jones Act raises prices on the island by $1.1 billion.
$1.1 billion is way too much. And you know what? When I go to Puerto Rico, I can tell you when I go to the McDonald's, and I haven't done that in a while, I've been eating very healthy, and who knows how much McDonald's will be doing, right, with the new Maha initiative. But it's almost as much as buying McDonald's in Manhattan, if not more. Because of the increased cost of goods. And that's just Puerto Rico. Of course, we're talking about how this impacts other places that are not in the contiguous U.S., like Alaska and Hawaii. And again, just to remind you, there's a lawsuit going on right now. The Koala Rum Company, they make rum on Hawaii and on the island of Kauai since 2009. And they're suing the federal government, arguing that the Jones Act violates the Constitution's port preference clause by unfairly inflating costs for Hawaii and Alaska. And subsequently, as you heard, maybe not in this particular context, but it does that in Puerto Rico as well. And this is not cherry-picking three places that are suffering, saying this is really more so it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense that if you want to ship something from point A to point B, you can't, or it costs way more than sending it, from point A to point B. You have to go to point C, and that would be the case. And that's why I want to bring our guest back in to kind of explain how that works. Josh Polk, he's a lawyer with Pacific Legal Foundation, which is handling the lawsuit. Josh Polk, help us understand why, if you create something, and let's just say Puerto Rico or even Hawaii in your case, and they want to ship a bottle of rum to wherever that's not in the U.S., how it's going to cost them 2 or 3 times more to do it because they have to ship it to the U.S. first.
So that's right. So actually, I have a real-life example. So our client wanted to ship a few pallets of rum bottles to Australia. Well, because there aren't very many international routes that pass through Hawaii, in part due to the Jones Act, they had to first ship to Los Angeles and then from Los Angeles to Australia. Well, the route from Hawaii to Los Angeles cost 3 times as much as the route from Los Angeles to Australia because they had to use one of the only 2 available shippers that exist in Hawaii that check all the Jones Act boxes.
What's interesting here is, look, I'm a New Yorker. I'm a kid from Brooklyn. I live in Jersey now. And we have a big port in Jersey called Port Newark, Port Elizabeth, very big. And when you go there, all you see are international ships flying all sorts of flags. Right, we do lots of international trade in our country, and I feel like when the reports are being made or when they're explaining the Jones Act, they make it sound like the rest of the 48 states don't engage in this practice, but we do, and with no repercussion, right, other than free trade, and it's I guess it sucks, right, and it's very unfair that you've got Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and perhaps some of the other territories that are impacted so negatively by this. I understand the spirit of this law, but it doesn't seem like it's effective, in my opinion. What say you?
Yeah, I would say the exact same thing. So whenever you describe it, it doesn't sound too bad, trying to protect the American maritime industry, I suppose, on its face. But we've got over 100 years of history of the Jones Act, and unfortunately, things haven't panned out the way that they were originally intended. We have fewer Jones Act compliant ships now than we did in the 1960s. We don't have a maritime workforce that meets demand. A lot of our ships are aging because it's too expensive to build ships in the United States. And it really just benefits a few monopoly holding shippers and a few union jobs.
And everybody else has to pay the price. Increased costs for no reason. It's kind of like the big strike that we had earlier this year with the longshoremen, and it was a very similar thing where they're fighting AI and automation, and I think a lot of people realize, we shouldn't have to pay the price for all those things just so that you guys can make $250 or $300K a year, which most Americans aren't making. So I get it. I think there were things that were once very well intentioned at the time that just don't work anymore, and they're no less patriotic today, just given the difference in our landscape and how the country's grown, I would say. So what's the next step for you guys? Where do you go? Does this go to a trial, or do you have a date set up in court?
So we filed pretty recently, and we served the U.S. government already. So we're essentially waiting for their response, but we're ready and willing to take this the distance, and we're optimistic. It's an ambitious claim. We're relying on a not often used constitutional provision because the U.S. government doesn't often discriminate against the ports of certain states, but here they are. And so we don't take cases that we expect to lose. We take cases we expect to win, and so that's what we're hoping to do here. Now,
when you file a lawsuit like this, I guess it goes against a particular. Does this go against what agency runs this, or is it directly against like the executive branch?
It's against officials acting in their official capacity for the for Customs and Border Protection, who enforces the Jones Act.
So when you do something like this, have you had a response from anybody in those agencies responding on behalf of the Jones Act, and what argument are they making, if any?
So they basically just reassert the same justifications that were set in place whenever the law was first passed, which is we want to protect the American maritime industry. Unfortunately, those justifications, again, just haven't panned out whenever you look at reality. And it doesn't seem like anything's going to change. It seems like it's going to keep harming maritime shipping options and keep harming American businesses, who, again, are the only ones restricted by the Jones Act. Foreign companies don't have to worry about that at all. They can use their own foreign flag ships, or they can hire ships from a different country and ship to the United States, whereas Hawaiians and Alaskans and Puerto Ricans and other people who are separated from the mainland are stuck with one or two options, which, again, in monopoly conditions, you're going to have increased prices and less competition.
Right, and I think the bigger part that for me that stands out is the rest of us, right? Those in California, those in New York, those in Michigan, we don't have this problem, right? We are getting ships from all over the world that are just pulling up to our ports, and we're not held to the same standard. And to me, that's the biggest issue here is why are we going to take these islands that are, smaller in nature and have limited capacity in terms of what they can get? Because you can't just drive across the bridge or drive, across the state line to the next state to get whatever you need. Like in this situation, they make rum, and apparently they don't even get the bottles for their rum locally. They have to import them. So they have to import some of their product, which I think is difficult. But again, that's the business they're in, and that's the rules of the game, and they build that into their cost. But it doesn't change the fact that they're getting squeezed and the rest of us are not. And that to me seems like I don't know, like we're picking on our own people.
Yeah, and they're getting squeezed on both ends. So whenever they import their packaging and bottles and that sort of thing, they have to pay their shipping costs, the exorbitant import costs, and then whenever they ship their finished product back to the mainland, they get squeezed again for the exorbitant shipping costs that way.
And it's not like we're saying this is a Chinese company operating inside of the United States. This is an American company operating inside the United States. And that's the part that really gets me, that I'm thinking, who are we trying to, if President Trump imposes a tariff on Canada, or like he did in Mexico to automakers, and now they're moving, Honda's moving its plant to Indiana, well-intentioned move, and we have a good consequence as a result. But here I don't see the win, right? It seems like we're protecting the like you said, these older ships and the maritime industry from any type of competition. And that to me doesn't seem fair at all, because in real life there's competition everywhere, right? I don't have to hire you as my lawyer. I could hire somebody else. And people don't have to listen to me on the radio. They could listen to somebody else.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And in this case, the law is harming an American entrepreneur. This is not some mega corporation. It's a relatively small enterprise. They have about 45 employees.
Wow.
And they just want to share their quintessentially Hawaiian products with the U.S. mainland. But again, just run into these costs, which again allows foreign competitors to undercut them. Because as you said earlier, they often have to pass those costs on to the customers in order to even afford being able to ship the goods to the mainland, whereas foreign companies don't have to deal with that. So they can actually charge less money for their products than the American can, and so we're likely to make money from shipping here.
Right. And in a hypothetical example, let's just say, I don't know, and I don't know how this affects American Samoa or but let's just say a competitor emerged from another Pacific island that wasn't Hawaii, and they wanted to send their stuff right to California. They would get that done quicker than the Hawaiians could, and they're not even an American company.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think that's part of what makes the Jones Act so perverse is that it's intended to protect American industry, but puts the entire burden on American business.
Right, solely hurts Americans, right, which is, that's the part that I don't get. Anyway, I really appreciate it. This was a really good conversation, and why don't you let everybody know how they could learn more about the work that you're doing on this case and how they could learn more about your work with Pacific Legal?
Sure. So our website is pacificlegal.org. That's pacificlegal.org. We have all of our case information on there. And if you want to reach out to me specifically for information, please reach me at my email address, which is jpolk@pacificlegal.org.
Outstanding. Well, keep up the good work and keep us posted on how this case progresses. I really appreciated the conversation and look forward to hearing more about what goes on. Good luck in court.
All right. Thank you very much.
You bet. All right, amigos, we continue because lots to discuss. Trump draws another line in the sand saying this is it with Hamas. We're going to get into that. Plus, Al Green. Al Green's been the talk of the town all day. You got the left melting down over Trump's speech last night, which I thought was stellar, and we brought it to you live last night. And I want to get some reaction to that as well. So keep it locked right here. Plenty to discuss. We're just getting started. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Getting to your calls momentarily. 833-482-5337, 833-4VALDEZ. And last night, the representative, Al Green, Congressman Al Green, was removed from the House chamber for repeatedly disrupting what President Trump was discussing, and the overall, what's the word I'm looking for? Speech, I guess, and was asked to leave by the sergeant at arms at the direction of the Speaker of the House, which I think was appropriate. And interesting is the meltdown that people are having all over the place. But there are still some Democrats that are able to call balls and strikes. And one of them, interestingly, is David Axelrod, President Obama's senior advisor. And this is a big deal, I think, because David Axelrod, I'm sure he doesn't like me or most of the things I like, right? I don't think we agree politically, but I think on this, we probably have some shared ground. Listen to this.
Well, I just want to, 160 years ago tonight, Abraham Lincoln gave his second inaugural address. He said, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in to bind up the nation's wounds. What a different spirit that was. And that was after a civil war. So it's one thing to mine our differences. It's another thing to try and heal our differences. And that is, that's the difference between real leadership and political expediency.
Would it have been healing to stand for Mark Fogel? Might have been.
No, I agree. You are absolutely right.
DJ Johnson.
Well, I will do what you will not. I will say, I think there were times when they should have risen. I think what Al Green did was despicable. I like Alyssa Slot. I think that's where Democrats should go. That doesn't obviate the fact that you shouldn't exploit our differences. You should try and solve problems and heal our differences. I don't see that inclination on the part of this president.
David Axelrod, I maybe didn't agree with the last part, but in some part I do. Right? I don't think President Trump wants to heal the differences that we have with the Democrats. I think he was highlighting those differences, in particular, girls in boys and girls sports. Right? That's not a difference he wants to heal per se. I think unless healing means you get out of sports and go do your own sports, right? Leave girls' sports alone. It's a problem that needs to be solved, and I guess that's where our difference of opinion lies. In so much as we can't, right? We can heal once we've made the decision, right? We've got to cut the cancer out, and then we can work on the healing. But we can't sit here and sing Kumbaya and come to a happy place thinking that we're going to agree. We're not going to agree. And I'm glad that he called out Al Green. I really am. I personally, they said they were going to heckle. They said they were bringing in hand clappers. They said they were going to do these things. Does it make it any less wrong? No. Would I use despicable? I think I would use the word despicable when the entirety of the Democrats sat there as a standing ovation was being given to a young boy that been battling brain cancer and was made an honorary Secret Service member. What a collective bunch of douchebags. All of them. Every last one of them, from Nancy Pelosi on. Everybody who thought they were too good to give that kid some respect. I've been to plenty of things, you name it, all sorts of rubber chicken dinner type of things, where I don't even know who it's up there, but if the whole room is standing, what am I going to do? Sit there and question everything? All right, listen, I'm gonna go with the flow here, give you the respect. I know how to be courteous, right? This was intentional disrespect, and it's, to use Axelrod's word, that was despicable. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I hope he has a long life as a law enforcement officer. But I hope he never has to defend the United States Capitol against Donald Trump supporters. And if he does, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life to suicide. And I hope he isn't one who has to testify against the people who carried out acts of seditious conspiracy and then live to see Donald Trump pardon those people.
That is Nicole Wallace on MSNBC yesterday, saying if DJ, the little boy, the young African-American boy that was there, who'd been fighting brain cancer, who was made an honorary Secret Service member by the President of the United States, she says, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life to suicide. A kid that's terminally ill. How uncouth. Imagine if Trump said this. I think they'd be filing articles of impeachment. But yet Nicole Wallace gets a pass. Not a single person's calling her a racist. I'm going to call her an insensitive pendeja, because unbelievable the way these people are behaving. No type of compassion, no type of sense. They hate Elon Musk for saying that we're getting ripped off, but they don't care that we're getting ripped off. Unbelievable. Anyway, folks, coming right back with another hour in most markets. And if this is the end of the road for you, hasta la próxima. Take care and God bless you, America.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another hour of the program. We're live, we're national. It's about 7 minutes after 10 p.m. Eastern Time, that's New York time. And our phone number, if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. And the Supreme Court, they denied the Trump administration's request to block $2 billion in USAID payments. The decisive decision, Amy Coney Barrett siding with the libs, disappointing us yet again. And that's how that went down. I'll get into that a little bit more down the road because I want to take it apart a little bit. But it is what it is. That's SCOTUS has spoken. Then you've got the markets are holding pretty steady. Secretary Lutnick is signaling a possible tariff compromise. I'm going to dig into that a little bit as well. But something I want to get to right now is some of the comments that were made today by J.D. Vance and Secretary Pete Hegseth, the Vice President, the Secretary of Defense, and the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. They were all at the border today, and you had a bunch of mayors testifying before Congress today who are the mayors representing sanctuary cities. So today was a big day for immigration talk, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But J.D. Vance really, I think, laid it out well when he said this. Check this out.
I have some bad news and some good news. And the bad news is that because of what Joe Biden did at the southern border for 4 years, we had record increases in migrant crime, in fentanyl deaths, and in just floods and floods of people who shouldn't be in our country who came into the United States of America. We also have a number of ways in which the cartels became more advanced, better warfighters, because Joe Biden opened up the American southern border and allowed the cartels to turn it into their playground. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is, as President Trump said last night at the State of the Union, it turns out we didn't need new laws. We didn't need fancy legislation. We just needed a new president of the United States, and thank God that's exactly what we have.
That, again, Vice President J.D. Vance, and I think he's 100% right there. And that's our vice president, right? The Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, really well said. He's been he hasn't disappointed, honestly. I've never met him. I've never interviewed him. He didn't take the time to come on this show during the campaign. I don't hold that against him a lot, maybe just a little bit. But I can say that he seems to be doing a very good job thus far, right? Now, who is it that the Democrats are thinking of putting up in their next run for vice president, let's say, right? We already saw what happened with Kay Malaeres and Tim Walz. Well, yesterday's rumors were that Tim Walz, Tiananmen Tim, was thinking of running on a ticket along with Jasmine Crockett. Yep. And we just heard from J.D. Vance, the actual vice president. I want you to hear what Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett had to say just before last night's speech, the potential vice president. Listen to this.
If you could tell Donald Trump anything tonight, what would you tell him?
I would tell him to grow a spine and stop being Putin's hoe.
She makes me laugh, and she's social media gold, right? You can always count on her saying something crazy and outlandish. I think she's got AOC beat when it comes to saying silly things. But I got to tell you, I don't know that that's enough to get her across the finish line. And we saw that with Kamala Harris, right? Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States, and her endorsements from, I don't know, from Beyonce to Megan Thee Stallion to, there were so many that came in support of her. And it just wasn't enough to get her across the finish line, because ultimately it's not that much of a popularity contest. People want proof to be in the pudding. And Jasmine Crockett, while she delivers a good one-liner and a good, burn, it doesn't go beyond that. I think oftentimes her views are just so skewed, and they're probably only popular with people geographically in her region. Now, that makes sense for her because she only needs to get elected by those people in order to win. But ultimately, she's got to vote on things that represent the rest of us, right? And that's how Congress works. I get it. The point I'm making is, it's one thing to run for Congress from the district you're in and when you're popular in your district. It's going to be a whole other situation to run for president, or, to zero in on vice president. That, I think, is cray-cray. I really do. That's absolute insanity. But I would love to see it, right? If we could only be so lucky, if the stars and the moons align, if we're on Santa's good list and we avoid the naughty list, maybe we have a Walls Crockett ticket for 2028. And we could have another 4 years, or likely 8 years, of Republican control should they make a move like that. Because I think that would be an absolute disaster for Democrats. Anyway, in addition to some of the stuff that's going on with domestic policy, on the tariff front internationally, Trump has announced a 1-month delay on tariffs on cars from Mexico and Canada. So they have one more month to get their ducks in a row. You also have some other international news that I was talking about earlier with respect to Hamas, President Trump taking a firm stance, issuing the last warning to release all hostages or it's over for you. Again, reiterating that there will be hell to pay. And this is a stern warning coming from the president on a Truth Social post just a little while ago. The post obviously comes after several former Hamas hostages who traveled to Washington, D.C. this week, spoke with the president, and a number of them. I'll mention them by name. Eli Sharabi, Doran Steinberger, Keith Siegel, Aviva Siegel, Naima Levy, Omer Shem, Lair Horn, and Noah Argamani. And this is a big deal, I believe, because I don't think Trump is bluffing. And here's the word. Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can choose, the president's post began. Release all of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it's over for you. Only sick and twisted people keep bodies. You are sick and twisted. I think he was clear here. I don't know about you, but I think he was clear. He continued, sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do as I say. I've just met with your former hostages whose lives you have destroyed. This is your last warning. For the leadership now, it is time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Also, the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. Make a smart decision. Release the hostages now, or there will be hell to pay later. Senator John Fetterman, who's been a big supporter of Israel, said he supported Trump's post. And he said, I fully agree with POTUS on X. So that's where we are. Now, the United States seemingly is not going to be negotiating with terrorists. And I'm wondering what will happen in this situation. Well, we're going to find out about that. We're going to talk about some domestic policy. We're going to talk about a lot of things. Lots of stuff on the table, lots more to add. So keep it locked right here. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
But in 2018, DJ was diagnosed with brain cancer. The doctors gave him 5 months at most to live. That was more than 6 years ago. Since that time, DJ and his dad have been on a quest to make his dream come true, and DJ has been sworn in as an honorary law enforcement officer, actually a number of times. The police love him, the police departments love him. And tonight, DJ, we're going to do you the biggest honor of them all. I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service.
That perhaps was the most heartwarming moment of the evening last night. I was both, happy, very happy. I just love that the president took that moment to acknowledge that kid's life. Hit home for me. It just did in so many ways. And equally as sweet as the moment was, it was probably the part that pissed me off the most to see the Democrats shun this kid. And I thought to myself, I don't understand how you could do that. This is a kid who's fighting for his life. He's terminally ill with brain cancer. He's giving it everything he has. And they don't care because of their hatred for Trump, their hatred for America, their hatred for that kid. Just all sorts of hate, in my opinion. And I don't know. I was just really taken aback by it. And I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here. Let's bring in somebody else that could opine on this and maybe give me a better perspective. Bruce LeVell is a longtime advisor to President Trump. He was the executive director of the National Diversity Coalition for Trump back in 2016, 2020 campaigns. And he spent some time in the Small Business Administration. He is a small business owner and remains a longtime advisor to President Trump. Bruce LeVell, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good evening.
You bet. And what was your take on that moment?
Well, remember, I'm 40 minutes from Athens, Georgia. So I saw, obviously the Lake and Riley is touching also. Many touching moments. Obviously, your question on DJ, outside of just, the fact, and thank God, of his survival, with this cancer, I saw it a little deeper. I saw President Trump honoring a young man, that this young man has the willingness to say, I want to be in law enforcement. And you remember the whole part of the golden age quote that President Trump so graciously, should I say, is blowing the horn at the highest mountain, is inspiring the military, inspiring people to come serve. We did have the highest recruitments in the military in the last month than we've had in over close to 20 years. So what does that say? To honor the brave men and women, and a lot of these folks that are listening to your show who wear that badge, was just to tell kids, especially little brown kids, hey, it's cool to say, when I grow up, I want to be a policeman. So I looked deeper into the fact, obviously, of what he was able to overcome, but I saw it deeper into this little boy, to highlight him on the world stage and to encourage other young men and women to say, hey, as a elementary school, middle school, high school student, I want to wear that badge one day. So I saw it a little deeper. So great night, highlighting just average, everyday citizens for the world to see. Tremendous.
Yeah, I agree. Now, what was your reaction to Democrats remaining seated during such a sweet moment?
Yeah, I was on a show, another TV show earlier today, and I was asked that question, and it gets back to what this whole America First movement's about. If you notice where Nancy Pelosi was sitting, and she's pretty much read the riot act on everyone in her party. You better not dare. She still controls the purse strings and all the funding for the majority of those House members. I'm sure they read the riot act. You better not stand. You better not clap. You better do it this way, or I'll cut your funding, cut you out of committees. That's how they play games over there. But in light of that, as President Trump said, listen, I'm going to bring these tax cuts, and I hope that you guys will agree that tax cuts help win-win for all. It's not partisan. It's just a win-win for all. And then he went on to say, a lot of y'all won't be here to get elected again because if you don't want to, and he's pretty much saying, look, I'm trying my best with a common sense approaches, but I don't know if there's any help. And that's why I thank God there are congressional races are every 2 years. And you're not going to see a lot of those folks in that chamber, Rich, and to your listeners that, this movement is so profound, so strong. And where I'm going with this real quick.
Sure.
CBS, you saw the polling was 76% on approval, CBS, of President Trump's State of the Union. CNN was 68%. So what does that tell you right there? So, we're not talking about 40, 50%. We're talking about 2/3, 3/4. So that says a lot. And listen, remember, we're only barely a month or so into this administration, a little over a month. So stay tuned. And so this is all part of, I call it the Great Reformation. The Reformation, the reset, as you want to call it, the reboot, the Control-Alt-Delete of some of these congressional seats. You saw a lot of the squads did not prevail in the last election. There's a couple more that are going to be vulnerable in the next election cycle. And there's a lot of folks that are going to have the willingness to I just want to come serve. And I want to buy into this common sense because remember, the president's not selling the Republican or the Democrat. He's selling the common sense. And so that's going to be very attractive to a lot of independents and a lot of moderates for a lot of these seats. And some of these folks that have been tooting that same old rhetoric and that craziness that's controlled by special interests will not prevail in the next election cycle. That's the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I agree with that. Folks, we're on with Bruce LeVell, longtime advisor to President Trump, presidential appointee, senior campaign advisor. He's worked on all three campaigns, was the executive director at the National Diversity Coalition for President Trump. And you've probably seen him at some point on television. He's always on television as a surrogate for the president. And we're having a lively discussion here on what transpired yesterday. And I want to pivot to some of what's going on elsewhere, like tariffs and other things that impact small businesses. So keep it locked right here. We're going to come right back with Bruce LeVell. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations, somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
On this I saw it was reported earlier today by Bloomberg News, and he wanted me to share this with all of you. We spoke with the big 3 auto dealers. We are going to give a 1-month exemption on any autos coming through USMCA. Reciprocal tariffs will still go into effect on April 2nd, but at the request of the companies associated with USMCA, the president is giving them an exemption for 1 month so they are not at an economic disadvantage. So the 3 companies that he spoke to are Stellantis, Ford, and General Motors. They requested the call, they made the ask, and the president is happy to do it. It's a 1-month exemption.
That is Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, announcing that there is a 30-day hold on tariffs that are going into effect. And I think this is a good thing, right? It's a good thing. It gives us a little bit more time to do things, and it shows that people are taking things seriously, right? They're saying, hey, look, we want to make a deal. And that was always the intention. So I want to bring it back to our guest. Our guest is Bruce LeVell. He's a longtime advisor to President Trump, an appointee of the president's, served in the SBA. He's also served on all 3 campaigns as a surrogate for President Trump. Bruce, everybody's up in arms about tariffs. Countries, you got Canadians talking all this smack that they're going to turn off the power to certain U.S. states, and the lights haven't gone out yet. But I think we're making a lot of headway. What say you?
Well, it's unfortunate that we got caught in a quagmire of business as usual for, unfortunately, generations. I'll use that term. They are unfair in terms of how we're, like the president says, we're treated. And listen, this is all part of the line item. It's kind of like the way business people approach a balance sheet. I hit 31 years in business myself here in April.
Congratulations.
And I approached, thank you. I appreciate it. I look at things from a profit and loss. The president, Howard Lutnick, and many other successful business people who have taken a leave to come serve to look at the nation's balance sheet. And obviously you see what DOGE is doing. You see the redundancies in our government, the finding wasteful spending, et cetera, et cetera. And they're looking at the unfair balances as it relates to the tariff and how what we're paying and what China charges, what obviously Canada and Mexico, and they're lopsided. And so, this is one of these things. He shot one across the bow. Like you said, April 2nd, not April 1st, going to be mistaken for April Fools. And this gives people time to look, let's get your house in order. Let's get to the negotiating tables. But at the end of the day, I think it's fair. We all talked about Made in America, Buy America, and we need to get back to that chant. We need to get back to where, Maytag and Zenith, as I grew up, and RCA were made here in the USA. And a lot of our great companies have been driven out through high regulation, high taxes, et cetera. And it's time to get back to business. Lower the regulations, which he said for every what is that for one? It's 1 to 10 now versus 1 to 3. It's more aggressive on cutting regs. For every one you bring, you cut 10. And then of course the Trump tax cuts are coming back. We saw what that did in the first administration as it relates to more discretionary income, to an employee's check, and what an employer can incentivize an employee, et cetera. And the list goes on. And the only way this is going to happen is we got to get skinny and get real aggressive on our balance sheet. And it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be some bumps and bruises because it's not going to be business as usual. It's not going to be, as they said before, well, we've always done it this way and passed the baton to the next administration. The next administration, nothing's ever done. So, the DOE is around the corner, Department of Education. There's a lot more, and we haven't even gotten, Rich, to the DOD in terms of
right.
what we're paying for hammers and all types of equipment, what kind of markups are on that. This is just the beginning. And like you said, we got to get our deficit under wraps. We're $34 trillion in debt. We have the highest consumer credit card debt ratio than any other nation here in the United States. Our student loan debt is almost $2 trillion of the $34 trillion of our deficit. The list goes on. We got to get our debt in control. We got to get our spending. We got to get our house in order. We got to bring it Made in America, Buy America, cut the regs, cut the tax, bring it home, and just start holding these other countries accountable for us having, spend our taxpayers' money for their their faults and what they got going on. So it's going to get bumpy. It's going to get rocky. But, listen, you know as well as I do, the best change is when there's pain.
Yeah, right. Nothing forces that like that. That's so true. And Bruce LeVell, I want to get your opinion, again, still on the topic of tariffs, and everything you said I think is accurate, and I agree with you. The issue of tariffs, I think, we've seen some positive stuff come out of it with respect to Honda, right? Honda was operating in Mexico to save some money. They said, all right, we're moving to Indiana. Apple said, hey, we're coming to the United States again, or, bringing this particular part of the operation back. And these are all good things. Now, the president's hitting, you said Canada, Mexico, and everybody else with minimal tariffs, right? Talking about 10%, and China 20%. And they're freaking out, saying we're ready for a real war, just getting the 20% tariff. But I'm looking at some stuff here, just one in particular. It's been all over the internet about a 270% tariff that is put on American milk coming into Canada. And we don't have that tariff on Canadian milk coming into the United States, right? And they do this to protect their dairy farmers from our dairy farmers, which are more plentiful and could probably provide a cheaper product. I get that. But what Trump is saying, all right, then we're going to have reciprocal tariffs. So Canada can now expect a 270% tariff on milk from our side. And this doesn't do anything good for them. It's my take that the president's goal, obviously, in my opinion, is for them to say, look, sell your milk here. Just let us keep selling our milk there. No more tariff, right? Free trade. Yeah. I think that's the solution. But I also think that they want to double down and talk a lot of smack. You've got a lot of provincial governors there that are, really just sounding the alarm instead of saying, hey, let's make a deal. They're like, nah, screw you. And I don't know if that's the right approach. How do you think this ends up?
Well, if you think about it, you have the prime minister on his way out. Okay, Trudeau, he's gone.
Sure.
I don't even know why he's even talking.
Yeah, he's lame
gone. The second part of that is maybe there is some value to the 51st state. They don't have a military. We protect Canada. What's wrong with entertaining the 51st state and making a governor of that, and just joining the United States and expanding the territory and working together. And, there's a lot of Canadians that, actually support that. And, humans were creatures of habit. We've always done it this way. Yeah. Something drastically has to change. There's a lot, and I said this is the Great Reset reboot, Rich. You're literally witnessing it before your very eyes. I'll go even further. This is the quote, and all your listeners listening, this is the season of exposure. Okay? Everything that has been dark, that has been in destruction, has been brought to light. And if you notice that, and if you can't believe, if you're not a believer, to see what President Trump has been through from impeachments and Jack Smith raiding his home and the fake Russian hoax collusion, delusion, and the lawsuits, the frivolous lawsuits, the weaponization of Fonnie Willis, Letitia James, the list goes on, and unfortunately the assassination attempt twice. If the Lord's not in this, I don't know what else to tell you and your listeners. And that's why this is a living, breathing, visual reformation that we're going through. And it's going to get, like I said, it's going to get bumpy. And like I said, there's going to be tremendous change, but it's going to be some level of pain because we are used to doing the same thing. We've done it this way. Why don't we keep doing it this way? And some people do not want to let go of the bad habits. And it's only going to get, in my opinion, I'm very optimistic, better, because we have to get our house in order or we won't have a house.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, what's your take on two things? One thing is, do you think that we are going to have to deal with a recession based on the last-minute spending of the Biden administration the last 6 months or so?
Yeah, it's interesting. Good question. I was looking at this and looking at just, you got to remember how much money we flooded on the American market and how we knee-jerked a lot of, especially as it relates to the PPP programs and all the other money that we threw away literally. And you saw the line items from USAID and many other agencies, and they just started, brother. They haven't even yet to get really into the weeds of it. The billions of dollars Ukraine, and the list goes on, and just the complete, utterly wasteful spending that we endured, especially in the last 4 years in the Biden-Harris administration. We're literally having to dig out of a hole, and we're still starting to see the side effects on open borders and what that's doing. Obviously, from you see from a crime perspective, what's over here, who is here. We don't even know the hundreds of thousands of children that are unaccounted for. The list goes on. I say this to say that all of these things affect the bottom line of consumer confidence, and it affects the economy tremendously. And like I said earlier in your show, I watched the credit card debt. I watched the interest rates. I watched the debt to ratio, what the country has, because I look at it as a balance sheet, and we're way out of whack. And there is a fire alarm going on of urgency, and that's why you're starting to see the cuts and the president going over there like, listen, Zelensky, we've given you this, and that. And, there's a famous saying, I love the way the president talks. He's like, where's your skin in the game? Yes, you need this, but you're going to sign over the minerals, you're going to sign over this. And to take back the Panama Canal, to talk about expanding into Greenland from a military standpoint and some other minerals there that we don't talk about. These are very life or death, future survival deals that we need in order to sustain the United States.
Outstanding. Bruce LeVell, we'll leave it there. Let everybody know how they could find you and follow you and keep up to speed with the great work you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm on X, Bruce_LEVELL, and of course, Truth Social, and and all the other social media apparatuses. And I'm on, like you said earlier, I'm on a lot of different networks, Fox and Real America and Newsmax, and I do write for a few of the publications on opinions, Washington Times and Newsmax, Daily Caller, etc. I'm actually crafting one now that's going to drop probably the next day or so from the White House. So I'm very active, and I encourage everyone listening to be very active in your community and just serve. Take your great talents and come out and serve and do what you can do in your local community, and let's just make America great again.
Like you said, we got to have skin in the game. Bruce LeVell, everybody.
Yeah.
Bruce, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, God bless. Thanks for having me.
You bet. God bless you, too. All right, amigos, your calls and more coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
And I also have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. We strongly support your right to determine your own future. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America. We need Greenland for national security and even international security, and we're working with everybody involved to try and get it. But we need it really for international world security, and I think we're going to get it. One way or the other, we're going to get it. We will keep you safe. We will make you rich, and together we will take Greenland to heights like you have never thought possible before. It's a very small population, but very, very large piece of land and very, very important for military security. America is once again standing strong against the forces of radical Islamic terrorism.
So will the United States get Greenland? Will Greenland play ball? I would love to know. I would love to have callers from Greenland, but I don't know if they have talk radio in Greenland. I wish they did, and I hope they do. But they should probably get a Sea Crane radio so they could hear it wherever they are. Anyway, I want to get to the phones. There's a lot of good Americans on the phone that want to talk with us tonight. Let's just see. Let us go to Lance, Kalispell, Montana, KOFI. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes, good evening, sir. Thank you for taking my call. Yes. I think two of the most impactful statements that President Trump made were the ones that he didn't say. First and foremost being he stepped aside and ceded jurisdiction over the House to the Speaker of the House, who had Al Green removed by the Master of Arms.
Yeah.
And that flies in the face of all of these people that say Trump's a dictator, Trump's a dictator. No. President Trump stepped aside and allowed the Speaker of the House to do his job, to adhere to the rules of decorum. And so I think we're and it doesn't just finish there, but if you look across the state, county, and global scale of things, everything that President Trump and everyone that President Trump has put in place is starting to reestablish an adherence to the non-biased, nonpartisan law and decorum.
Just reestablishing what he talked about, law and order. He talked about that a lot during the campaign. And I think you're 100% right, Lance. This is, last night I said, that was my first take on this, was that he was incredibly, what they say he never is. He was very presidential. And I've always thought he was very presidential. He just delivers things a little bit differently than most, likely because he's a New Yorker. But he was very calm. He was very cool. You know, I remember him saying, get him out, you know, at rallies and things like that. Yesterday, his decorum was on high. You know, if I had a criticism, it was I think he should have addressed Senator Warren as Senator Warren, not as Pocahontas, or at least Senator Pocahontas. But again, I don't think that was the forum for the nicknames, right? If I were there, I likely would not have called him Donaldus Magnus, right? But Lance, thank you. I'm going to get back to the rest of the calls right now momentarily, but I got to take a pause here. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
And we continue right to the center of America, Midwest. Let's go to Eric, Janesville, Wisconsin, streaming from WLS. Go right ahead.
Thanks. I have a thought on fentanyl, believe it or not. Right now, we're constantly told that fentanyl drugs are flowing across both borders. Actually, I have 2 points. And that may well be, but they also come in through shipping ports, which no one talks about.
Yeah.
And here's my other go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I think you're right. I can tell you that I worked in government back in 2013, 2011 to 2013. And I went to a meeting for the New Jersey state government where we were briefed by the DEA and the customs enforcement people. And at the time, the majority of the heroin coming into the United States was coming in smuggled through the port of Newark and the port of Elizabeth at that time. It wasn't the southern border. It was right on a ship. So you're on to something, brother. There's a lot of places where they sneak drugs in, and we should not forget about that. All right, brother. Thank you. I appreciate it. Eric in Janesville, Wisconsin, WLS. Amigos, we continue with another hour of action-packed talk radio with you all, the American people, and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere. And if this is the end, hasta la próxima. Good night, and God bless.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you this hour. It's about 7 minutes past 11 o'clock on Wednesday night. We're live, we're national. Here's the phone number, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I'm keeping you company for about another hour, and I want to get into a number of things that we have not discussed yet tonight, but recap on a couple of things that we have. The Supreme Court today denied the Trump administration's request to block $2 billion in payments from USAID. The deciding factor there was Amy Coney Barrett, the Supreme Court justice, siding with the more liberal justices on the court to eventually not allow that to go through. So that's the update on that. You also got markets holding steady because of Secretary Lutnick signaling that the administration may have a possible tariff compromise. You had the stocks pretty much holding steady. Dow Jones was good. Things were a little bit hectic on Monday, right, as a result of some conversation. But now I think because of, tariffs that were coming in Tuesday, but now it seems to have calmed somewhat. And Secretary Lutnick indicating that, let me see the quote here, the president could meet them in the middle some way by later today or tomorrow. Also saying, and the president is listening because, he's very, very fair and he's very reasonable. So I think he's going to work something out with them. He later clarified to Bloomberg, Lutnick, that is, that some product categories, such as automobiles, could be exempted from the 25% tariffs. Lutnick reiterated that these efforts are part of a broader effort to curtail the flow of fentanyl entering the United States, saying this is not a trade war, this is a drug war. We're trying to send the message that fentanyl has got to end, coming in from Mexico and Canada. So that's the update there on what happened. And I think this is a good thing, right? I think we want to stop fentanyl and we want to continue to have a good situation. And Trump's, I'm going to say heavy-handed approach, but really I should probably say even-handed approach with steady pressure, right? Because I really think that's probably the best way to put it. It's working. Right, people are realizing this. He's not playing ball. He's been saying this stuff for 30 years since he was building, hotels and other golf courses and all the types of casinos and things that he builds. And the song hasn't changed. What's different now is that he's the president and has a lot more influence than he had back then. So take that for what it is. Also, let me see, Bitcoin prices. You got Bitcoin soaring a little bit earlier in the week, as well as even today. It's back over 90,000. And let me see, it was bouncing back. Of course, there was a little bit of a roller coaster week. Things were down slightly. It's not a huge rebound either. I mean, went down a little bit and it's back up. But let me see here. Bitcoin price climbed around 10% in the last 24 hours, pushing the combined crypto market back over $3 trillion. I think it's a good idea to get some crypto. What type of crypto? I don't know. What I got myself some XRP. It's cheap, and I think it's expected to make some gains. Bitcoin and major cryptocurrencies like XRP from Ripple, Solana, and Cardano all rocketed last weekend after Trump posted to his Truth Social account that he plans to create a U.S.-focused crypto reserve. A U.S. crypto reserve will elevate this critical industry after years of corrupt attacks by the Biden administration, which is why Trump's executive order on digital assets directed the presidential working group to move forward on crypto strategic reserves that include XRP, SOL, and ADA. And that was from Trump's post on Truth Social. And we're 2 days away from the White House Crypto Summit, first crypto summit ever. Our buddy John Tobacco is going to be in attendance there. I'm trying to twist his arm into coming on, but he said it's a packed day and he may not have time to do a full interview while he's, participating. And then there's a dinner and, like an after party type event. And the audio quality may not allow him to call in afterwards. So we may have to wait till Monday for that report. But again, I'm trying my best here to get him on to give us an update of what's going on at the crypto event at the White House this Friday. So that's just a little update on what's happening with crypto. And there's plenty more. There's also a report out there. Listen to this. An early sign of dementia. It might be keeping you up at night. I want to get into that because I think dementia is one of those things that affects a lot of people. Most people that you meet and know in your life have dealt with someone that dealt with dementia somewhere, and they realize the effects that it has on families. It's a very, very difficult thing, a very challenging thing to deal with. And sleep and the type of sleep you get affects this directly. So we're going to have a little conversation on that with a board-certified neurologist. But before we do, I want to throw in just one more thing to our little agenda here. And that is the Freedom Caucus vowing to quickly censure Congressman Al Green for his behavior last night. Now, you might recall that he was likely, going to get in trouble because he was thrown out. Well, he responded to that. Listen to this.
I'm willing to suffer whatever punishment is available to me. I didn't say to anyone, don't punish me. I've said I'll accept the punishment, but it's worth it to let people know that there are some of us who are going to stand up against this president's desire to cut Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security.
So that's Al Green. And I will leave you with an update on what's going on with Hamas, because, of course, President Trump made a very, very, very stark warning and message saying there will be hell to pay and it will be over for you if all of the hostages are not returned. Listen to this update from Caroline Levitt.
If the U.S. has a longstanding policy that we do not negotiate with terrorists, then why is the U.S. now negotiating directly and for the first time ever with Hamas?
Well, when it comes to the negotiations that you're referring to, first of all, the special envoy who's engaged in those negotiations does have the authority to talk to anyone. Israel was consulted on this matter. And look, dialogue and talking to people around the world to do what's in the best interest of the American people is something that the president has proven is what he believes is good faith effort to do what's right for the American people.
Is it just about the hostages, or are they also talking about the president's plan to take over Gaza?
These are ongoing talks and discussions. I am not going to detail them here. There are American lives at stake. I would defer you to the Department of State for further details, but I'm not going to get into those talks here at this podium.
So there's Caroline Levitt. There will be hell to pay, is what President Trump said, and that it will be over for you. And I take him at his word. He says he's going to give Israel everything they need if we don't get these hostages and the dead bodies. Going on, doubling down, saying, who holds on to dead bodies? That is some sick, sick stuff. Anyway, lots more to come. Again, what about your sleep pattern might reveal an early risk of dementia? You don't want to miss this. I'm Rich Valdez, coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And Earlier, I asked you, what about your sleep pattern might be an early sign of dementia risk? Well, according to this article I'm taking a look at, being that we spend so much of our time sleeping and a quarter of our time asleep is spent dreaming, this is the key factor. Now, given the central role that dreaming plays in our lives, we still know so little about why we dream. But in 2022, there was a study published in Lancet that talked about dreams, and it goes on, more specifically, showing that having frequent bad dreams and nightmares, bad dreams that actually make you wake up, during the middle or older part of your life, older age part of your life, may be linked with an increased risk of developing dementia. In the study, it was analyzed that from data on 3 different studies, that these participants were all dementia-free at the start of the study, and they were followed for 9 years, and they discovered quite an interesting thing, tying things into bad dreams and nightmares. So bad dreams and nightmares may, in fact, be the risk factor here, at least according to this article and this study. So I want to get a take on this. I also want to, in the next segment, explore why there's a seeming increase amongst dementia diagnoses for people that are as young as 55 years old. And I want to do that with somebody we've had on before. He was terrific, neurologist, Dr. Brandon Brock. He's a clinician at Carpathia Collaborative. And he's with us now. Dr. Brock, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. So tell me, your thoughts on this particular study and the potential for bad dreams or nightmares to be an indicator that you may have dementia later in life.
Well, I mean, that's what the study shows, and it's an interesting study. And there's a lot of things I think everybody should kind of realize here. I mean, sleep in general has a lot of components to it that just later on in life, it can be indicative of problems down the road. If you don't sleep, well, there's links to dementia. If you sleep too much, there's links to dementia or problems. Now we're finding that, if you're having nightmares, there may be a link. And I think that, and again, I've looked at some of the study, and I think that as they're just studying sleep in general, they found that this was a common pattern. So it's more than likely an incidental finding that was something that was statistically prevalent, which is really interesting because if you look at the physiology of sleep and you look at PTSD and nightmares, you're releasing stress hormones. And some of the stress hormones are causing nightmares. And we know this, that stress hormones like cortisol,
right,
when it's too high, it can go to a part of the brain called your hippocampus, which it's what stores short-term memories, and it goes really quick in Alzheimer's disease and dementia, certain types. And we know that when cortisol is too high and it's causing bad dreams or sleep disturbance, that chemical itself, when it's too high or not regulated, it disrupts sleep, it can give nightmares, and it can shrink that part of the brain. So I have a suspicion, just from what I understand about neurophysiology, that could be a mechanism behind this, and it could be a mechanism behind the dreams. So it is interesting how when you take multiple research papers and you put them all together, it actually does make sense, and it can be a side effect of your overall hormonal chemistry and stress hormones just being abnormal.
Now, when you say overall stress, chemistry of stress hormones being abnormal, would that be like just something that happens, or something that happens because of a horrible diet, something that happens because you don't exercise, all of the above? What say you?
That's a great question. So let's say that you are under a lot of stress, or you've had a really stressful event. I mean, and again, these are things that can vary from person to person. Some people can see certain things or experience certain things, and they have a terrible time after that, whereas some don't. Yeah. But if you perceive something as stressful, your adrenal glands that make these stress hormones, it will maladapt. It will adapt to deal with the stress, okay? And your brain controls that, and your brain regulates it. So essentially you go through these events, and then this system becomes very maladapted and very efficient or inefficient. So sometimes to deal with stress, you'll just start producing, to compensate, too much cortisol. Well, that's good in some situations because we need cortisol to deal with inflammation and to help with blood sugar regulation. But if it becomes so maladapted, it's like the faucet gets turned on and it doesn't get turned off, and your nervous system gets, we call it plastic, or it gets kind of stuck that way. And if that is just going at too high of a rate for a long period of time, the stress hormones start to deteriorate your brain, cause inflammation, enhance pain responses, make fat accumulation. It alters your gut absorption, and it messes with your blood sugar. So there's lots of things that fall. I mean, this is like a crash course on not just this sleep study, but a lot of things that can snafu and kind of go in the wrong direction.
Right. No, but this is fascinating to me because I constantly, we hear about the Make America Healthy Again and all of the chronic diabetes that we have in our country. And I typically, and even my own experience, I ate a lot of garbage. So, I got fat and whatever. But what I'm hearing you say is that you could simply be stressed and mess up your ability to regulate blood sugar and gain weight.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, if we have a little bit of time, let me give you a scenario here. So,
yeah,
people will go through COVID, right? I mean, it's a stressful time, right?
Sure.
People are going through, job changes. They're going through family dynamic changes. Their kids are going through educational changes because they can't go to school or it's changing. There's so many things we could talk about, how life has changed over the last, and we're looking at 5 years now, right? The dynamics of our entire society has changed. I am seeing as a clinician an enormous, it used to be you'd go to the doctor and he'd say, you know what, you just need to lower your stress and get some sleep, and people did it and they did better. Right now, when we say that, we literally mean stress is getting you. It's that we are seeing more stress-induced illness right now than we've ever seen before. Now, if you take that and you couple it with the fact that the quality of food is absolutely horrible, and then you also look at the fact that in the last 40 years, the nutritional content of what our food and our crops are is only about 30% as complete, meaning good minerals, good vitamins. It's been decimated and completely altered over the last 40 years. So the quality of our food, it's not just if it's organic and all that stuff, just the absolute quality of food has gone down. So people are less resilient. They're more stressed. The environment is a wee bit dirtier. And, when you start adding all these things together, dementia is not just the sum total of one thing. It's the sum total of many things. You take the stress. You take the environment stuff. You take the food quality. You're lacking critical nutrients. There's a bunch of additives. There's a bunch of ingredients that shouldn't be there. And the only reason why I kind of went off on this tangent is because you talked about Make America Healthy Again.
Sure.
I'm hoping that those antecedents that are just kind of screwing everything up and they all start to pile on top of each other, that's why we're starting to see dementia in 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds. The average age of dementia in my clinic for females is 52 to 54 for the onset. Those are the people that I end up seeing. I'm not saying that's the norm.
Right.
But those people are definitely scared. So I think that overall, our natural environment and everything in it is just getting less healthy.
Folks, we're on with Dr. Brandon Brock, and we're going to continue to pull on this thread because there's a reason why people in their 50s are being diagnosed at a higher level, and we're going to talk about that on the other side of this. Don't go anywhere. We return with Dr. Brandon Brock and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if the viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
We did a study that was more diverse in more centers and spanned both white and Black Americans. And we also spent an enormous amount of energy to make sure we captured all of the cases. And then the population has gotten older. So as life expectancy has gotten older, the risk is higher. So the risk by age 75 is 4%. By age 85, it's 20%. And by age 95, it rises to the full 42% chance of getting to dementia before death, but more than half the risk is after age 85.
That's Dr. Joseph Koresh. He is one of the authors of this study, and I'm reading an article published just 2 days ago, New York University study, my alma mater, Go Violets, and the number of dementia cases will double by 2060, reaching 1 million new diagnoses each year. This is interesting, and I think we understand from the last time that we spoke with Dr. Brock that this is in part because people are living longer, so that we're going to see more cases. But the 55 part, I think, is the concerning part, the fact that it's more than doubled what earlier research had found. Dr. Brock, welcome back.
Hey, thanks.
Now, what's your thought on why this number has doubled from what previous research on, post 55, and what you're finding anecdotally with your own patients, saying that you're finding people in their 50s as well coming in?
Yeah, I think it's not much of the older, obviously in the 90 and the 80-year-old, category. I mean, it's something that we don't want, but it's something that we anticipate. The thing that's alarming is as you get closer and closer to just retirement age, that's obviously alarming because when I say retirement age, let's just put it around 65. And, that's the time period where a lot of people are wanting to slow down and retire and they want to go enjoy themselves. Well, obviously, you don't want to plan for somebody to have dementia where now they just have to retire and then just kind of transition into, some sort of care where they can't get out and they can't do the things they want to do. So really what we're looking for is we want quality of life as long as you can go. But to get to the point here, we are seeing it is alarming that people, even before retirement age, like I said, some people in their 50s and some people in their 60s. And what we're seeing, kind of going back to what I said earlier, in the last 5 years and 10 years, there's so many things that it seems like has just contributed to an environment where all neurodegenerative or neurological issues are getting more prevalent. We're seeing more dementia. We're seeing more autism. We're seeing even a significant increase in cancer. So it's not just this, but, dementia is neurodegeneration, and neurodegeneration is just brain cells that are just not healthy. And there's a lot of things that contribute to their state of unhealthiness. Like I told you, food and stress and sleep and our environment. I think that there's so many little things, or there's so many things that they have little gradual changes that eventually add up. And when you take all those factors and you put it together, it is just very difficult. Our brain in particular suffers a lot because those cells don't divide and undergo mitosis. So they don't divide, undergo mitosis. So once they're dead, they're dead.
Right. They can't come back.
Yeah. It's very hard. There are some stem cell theories and stuff like that, but nonetheless, it's very difficult to get them back. So keeping them healthy, they accumulate toxins. They get dinged by stress. Blood sugar is a big, big, big problem right now. People that get really high insulin spikes, because that's what happens before you get diabetes in a lot of cases, it is just really creating a problem for metabolic health, for obesity. And, when we start to see these metabolic changes, that insulin fluctuation, before you become diabetic, like I said, in a lot of situations, it is just creating significant problems for brain. In fact, there's even some classifications of diabetes really being one of the major onsets of Alzheimer and dementia. So when you add all these things up, all of those conditions are becoming more prevalent. And since all of those are becoming more prevalent, the brain is more than likely deteriorating faster in individuals. So we're seeing the development of symptomatology much, much earlier in life and then more prevalent later in life.
A couple of months ago, Doc, there was a report about alcohol that came out from, I think, the CDC, causing all sorts of things like higher cancer risk. And there was some question as to what type of impact that makes on the risk for dementia. Weigh in on that.
Well, what we're looking at in regards to when we look at alcohol, there's really not anything good about it. I mean, alcohol is just pretty much a toxin. And really, it's a significant neurotoxin. There's really, and we always say, well, there's good components of wine and stuff like that in a little bit. But what we're really finding is the overall benefit is just really not. It's not as good as the overall negative components of it. It's just something that we're finding that it should be kind of eliminated out of one's lifestyle, and that's unfortunate because a lot of people can socially drink and not have a problem with it. But if you have all these other factors, if you have a family history of heart disease, if you have a family history of diabetes, and if you have a family history of multiple, family members having dementia, I mean, I would just give the recommendation: don't drink. There's really no upside. There's really no upside to it when you look at it. I mean, maybe temporarily having a good time or whatever, or being in a social environment, but at the end of the day, that stuff adds up too.
Now, to put a fine point on this, I'm looking at some of the lifestyle modifications that are recommended: maintaining a healthy weight, engaging in physical activity, balanced diet, don't smoke, don't drink alcohol, get enough sleep, and manage stress. I think a lot of that can work its way into, go to the gym or have an active lifestyle and eat well. But when it comes to getting enough sleep, sometimes the activity will make you tired. I go to the gym a few days a week and usually makes me tired. But there's days where I don't sleep, probably because I get jacked up on coffee right before I do my show at night, and we do it live. And it's 3 a.m. and it's 3:30 and I'm watching TV, and I take it in stride. I'll sleep a little later in the morning. But there's days where I don't get to sleep later in the morning, and then I see articles like this that say 55. I'm less than 10 years away from 55. And I start thinking, what can I do to help myself sleep better so that I don't worry about getting dementia or anything else from not sleeping well?
Right. So you're wanting to know how to sleep better then, yeah?
Yeah, it sounds like that to me. I'm thinking that sounds like the only one I can't control.
Well, I mean, some of the things that we monitor on our patients is, the amount that you're sleeping, it's important, but we want to know how much deep sleep you're getting and how much REM sleep you're getting. Some people are only getting 15 or 20 minutes of deep sleep a night, but they're sleeping 6 or 7 hours. And that's, it's almost kind of I'm not going to say a pointless journey. I mean, if you stay up 72 hours or longer, people can go psychotic and, they start having hallucinations, and sometimes that creates permanent damage. So I would definitely recommend that you get some sleep. But, to get good sleep, there's something called sleep hygiene where, I would say this. Some things that people are doing nowadays that make them not sleep well is obviously you can't take stimulants before you want to rest. And I know your hours are odd, so that's a definite a difficult journey when somebody has odd hours. But for the average person, it's like, you need to make sure that you put down your electrical devices like your phone and stuff, the blue light that could potentially be emitted from your device, and possibly some other components around that device. It's much better to read a book than it is to be around an electric device. I would say try that. I would say, make sure that you have an environment where there's not a lot of stimulation. I like my patients to be in a completely dark room and be completely deprivated of all, stimulation, and that includes sound. Now, some people like a certain type of noise in the background, like a fan, and they get used to that. But you need to get into bed at a certain time, and then you need to train yourself. If you stay up late and that becomes a pattern, then your brain it gets used to that pattern, and it just doesn't sleep right. That's, how some people can adjust their sleep schedules. But make a goal, shut down the stimulation, the mental and emotional stimulation. Make sure that you're burning some calories and doing some exercise during the day. If we talk about the one thing that's going to make you live longer, it's lifting weights and resistive training. If you want to live longer, I'm just telling everybody out there, keep your muscle mass. If you do that, it is probably one of the best things. And then sleeping and getting to sleep and getting a routine for sleep is another big one. There's all kinds of supplements. There's obviously a lot of medications. I hope that everybody that's, is really working towards the goal of not having to use a lot of medications, because a lot of the medications that people use to sleep are possible triggers for dementia.
Oh, wow. So let me ask you a question, because I use ashwagandha with L-theanine, and it seems to work pretty well. But your thoughts on that?
Well, L-theanine is something that actually it's a nutrient that it activates something. It stimulates intracerebral, the amount of GABA in your brain. And so GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter that allows you to calm down and relax, okay? So we know that certain types of magnesium helps with theanine, and then ashwagandha is another herb that helps alleviates some inflammation and also helps regulate some of your neurotransmitters so that you can have more of a calming effect. And ashwagandha also takes those stress hormones I was talking about in the previous section, and it helps regulate some of those components of cortisol and your stress hormones so that those aren't as active, and you can calm your brain down, and your blood sugar is also under better control in the middle of the night. And these obviously aren't medications. They don't alter your physiology as much as medications, and they're more supplemental or herbal. So they're more subtle in how they change your physiology, but they still have an effect, especially when you start kind of adding some of these things together. Some people can turn off their electric devices, not take any stimulants, get exercise during the day, set the time right, make the mood right, their environment, their lighting and stuff like that. And then they can take some supplements and some herbs, and a lot of times they can dodge having to take a lot of these medications, which we know are not really good for your brain in the long run.
Outstanding. Man, I could do this all day. You know your stuff. Folks, we're on with Dr. Brandon Brock. He's a clinician at Carpathia Collaborative. He's a neurologist and clearly really good at what he does. Doc, let everybody know how they could learn more about the work that you're doing and how they could follow your work.
We have a really nice multidisciplinary team. We're at Carpathia Collaborative. We're in Dallas, Texas. It's carpathiacollaborative.com. And anybody can just go check it out, read the bios, and just see what people are about there. We do a lot of this kind of stuff where we're dealing with people that they don't necessarily want to be super medicated, but we deal with that stuff if we need to. But a lot of people are looking for alternatives right now. They're looking for ways because they're becoming more educated on, oh, my gosh, there's dementia, and there's a lot of things that are creating this. What can I do to help myself where I just don't slam down a bunch of pills? And, look, some people got to sleep. We deal with that. But some people we can just do a little, and it goes a very, very long way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the advice and for the conversation. Very, very informative stuff. Folks, make sure you check out their work at Carpathia Collaborative, and we're coming right back. Thank you, Doc. Appreciate it.
You bet.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I want to say to you that I really appreciate what you're doing for people and their state of mind and their viewpoints on the airwaves every night. I really do appreciate it.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We go to the phones, open phones across America. Time-honored tradition here on this program. Started by the great Larry King way back when, continued by Jim Bohannon for 3 decades, and you and me get to carry that torch tonight together. I love that. John, Reno, Nevada, streaming the program tonight, richvaldez.com. Go right ahead, John.
Good evening, Rich. I'll tell you, Donald Trump is a great humanist and a pragmatist. He realizes, like many people, that Ukraine was doomed to failure. With the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the new borders were largely drawn up by ambitious Ukrainians, and they included swaths of territory that are predominantly Russian-speaking. After independence, the rise of corruption and ultra-Ukrainian nationalism forced a secession of those regions, and that led to the first war, and now we're on the second war.
Now, I just want to ask you a question, John, to clarify. It sounds like you're saying that if it was destined for failure, would you say that Latvia and Kazakhstan and all of the other elements or other former parts of the Soviet Union were also destined for failure?
Well, I haven't heard much commentary on how those borders were drawn. My Eastern
so you're saying
European
particularly the Ukrainian border is problematic, because I mean all of those places, have former Russian-speaking people, right? Because they were all one big country once.
Yes, they were. But my Polish and Bulgarian friends all assure me that the Ukrainian borders were particularly suspect. And they were not surprised at what has happened. And the nationalism in Ukraine got out of control, and that drove a big part of this problem.
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying. I think that it goes beyond that, though. I think there was a real element of meddling from Barack Obama, from Joe Biden, Victoria Nuland, and others that really helped to fuel the color revolution they had, the Maidan Square incident. All of this stuff had deep state, CIA fingerprints all over it, and I think we caused a lot of this disruption to install our people so that we could do what we wanted to do in that part of the world, things we've done in many parts of the world, and I say we as the current people that were involved in the United States government at the time. Every administration has a different angle, and Trump's is clearly one of America First, which I support wholeheartedly. I think that that's the right way to go, and I think you should let people be. I also think that you got to be careful, and you got to honor some of your commitments. And we currently have a commitment with Ukraine called the Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurances. Now, I think that's one we can wiggle our way out of because it was mutually signed by Russia saying we're not going to invade them, by UK saying we will help provide your security, along with the United States saying we'll help provide your security as long as you give up your nukes. However, not everybody's kept their end of the bargain, and we have. And, Trump sent lethal aid when it was his turn. Prior to that, Obama sent, humanitarian aid, blankets and food and things of that nature. And Biden sends the whole house. He gives them everything, $350 billion worth of military aid and assistance and et cetera. So I think all of that to say is, I think, what a country wants to do, whether nationalism is on the rise or not, really isn't any of my concern. I can't, say what Ukraine is going to do, what they should do, why they should do it. All I know is that we shouldn't give them money to this degree, right? But we do have to give them some sort of support because we literally told them, hand over your nukes and we will protect you. And it's unfair and dishonest, in my opinion, to say, hey, look, we're going to protect you from Russia. And then when they get invaded by Russia, we don't do it. It's another thing to go ahead and say, we're going to give you money, hand over fist, and it's never going to end, right? So we have to come up with a happy medium. But, John, I got to take a pause right here. I apologize for not being able to continue with you, but very good point, and I'm glad you brought it up. John in Reno, Nevada, streaming the show tonight. Folks, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, with seconds to go on the clock, I want to go to Vero Beach, Florida, WTTB, and check in with John. Go right ahead quickly.
Hi, Rich. Oh, man, my amigo.
Hey, brother.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I've been sick and in and out of the hospital. Real quick.
Oh, glad you're well.
You had touched on something about the green people of Greenland. If they only had the ability to listen to the shows with a Sea Crane radio, maybe we should donate them. I'll donate one.
I love it. I love it. Maybe if the folks from Sea Crane are listening, we can actually have a campaign, Sea Crane for Greenland. I love it. Check them out at seacrane.com. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. And folks, make sure you are tuned in for our conversation with Josh Polk, because we're going to talk about, and what we've talked about, the Jones Act. You don't want to miss that. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.